Hello, hello! Welcome to another episode of History in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse. And before we begin, as always, thank you so much to my generous patrons, my British rail critics, and of course, my underwater train finders. You are the reason why this content remains incorrect. And today, we are going to discuss some, imagination. Yes, that is what we're going to talk about. These were a bunch of different train concepts that, basically were artists' interpretations of what trains might look like in the future. Whether they be locomotives or the whole train. Different ideas for things that the future would definitely absolutely do. Because the future is great and wonderful, and in the early 20th century, people had a lot of concepts for what the year 2000 was going to be. And now we know that we are actually very boring, and none of these actually came to fruition. And some of them are completely ridiculous. These are 5 absurd, never-built train concepts. Now, I want to mention that actually every single one of these is coming from magazines, not actual engineers. None of these were ever seriously considered. That's why we're talking about imagination. These are just considerations, things that artists might have thought were possible. And a handful of them were somewhat pursued, but not in the form that the artists drew them in. And the first one is, no, come on, how many times do I have to go over this? The propeller. It follows me wherever I go. There's no escape. Listen to me, and I need to make this very, very clear with everybody here. Propellers, open propellers, with no covering, do not belong on land vehicles. These things are about to go full Fargo on somebody, okay? This isn't funny anymore, it's getting old, and yes, this was Popular Science Monthly, the April 1st, 1930 edition. You might think this is an April Fool's joke. It's not. This is just someone's idea. We're combining a plane with a locomotive. I guess it would be a rail bus. This actually gets worse, if you can believe it. Let's ignore the propeller for now, even though that's clearly the biggest issue here. But this is a monorail. How does that supposed to work? Well, apparently this was actually proposed by a Cleveland Heights, Ohio inventor, as he felt the monorails would be cheaper to build, which, yeah, you're only effectively building half a rail, so that does make some level of logical sense. But the mechanism proposed in the article involves... Oh man, you are never going to believe this. It's supposed to use the same principle that allows a bicycle to stay on 2 wheels. The propeller is apparently mounted in such a way that it may be turned toward either side to counteract any tendency of the car to tilt. Just like someone on a bike leaning back and forth to keep it stable. This is, of course, ridiculous. I'm not saying it necessarily wouldn't work, as I suppose it's theoretically doable. There's just no way to make this safe. Okay, the propeller is bad enough, but the fact that this thing could topple over at any waking moment, one mechanical failure, and it's over. Like, are you kidding me? And the whole propeller thing was to make these go fast, so this thing is designed for speed. So we're traveling at least 100 miles per hour, and this thing could fly off the rail. The only rail, at any waking moment, the second propeller turns the wrong way. Like, are you kidding me? No, absolutely not. As for the propeller itself, I will give the artist's rendition this. They had the decency and the common sense to mount it up, away from where people would be standing. So there's a lot less risk here of the propeller actually hurting somebody. The same can't be said for the real-life examples of this, like the Aerowagon and the Schienenzeppelin. The Schienenzeppelin's probably the best real example, on the basis that it did work and was very aerodynamic. The propeller is right next to everybody, so that's bad. It couldn't go backwards or up hills, but still, you know, they tried. The Aerowagon is more of a shack with a propeller on it, and it killed people, so that was good. But speaking of aerodynamics, I have a serious question about this. Wouldn't this be really top-heavy, too, with the propeller so high? I mean, this thing has to be balanced in a very, very, very specific way, otherwise horrible things are about to happen. And the setup here kind of makes it inherently top-heavy. You know? Like, I'm just saying, it's just one of those things that's bothering me. It bothers me. Oh, what, another one? Seriously, it's not a good idea. Stop doing this. This one is well, interesting, to say the least. This is from a magazine called Modern Mechanics, which also apparently was an April edition. This is also a monorail, known as the Aerodrive Monorail Express. And, again, I just feel like you're missing the point here. Though, admittedly, it being elevated does make it a lot more sensible, as it kind of resembles the Benny railplane in that regard, which was at least somewhat better thought out in terms of safety. So this might be a little more reasonable in the end. Its shape and design is very, very Fisher-Price. Definitely not equivalent to the real-life version in that regard, but I do think this, at the very least, would be at least a little bit safer. So, fair. Modern Mechanics, you're back again, I see. A November edition this time. What in the world am I looking at? There is so much to unpack here. Based off of the issue itself, this particular one was meant to represent a futuristic Streamliner steam locomotive. Now, we know what Streamliners look like. Streamliners have a very, sleek appearance. There are plenty of examples. None of them, not a single one, look anything like this nonsense. The wheels. The wheels, the wheels, the wheels. I think the wheels take up more space than any part of the actual locomotive. Where's the boiler? Where is the firebox? Are they in the wheels? What is happening here? And it's so narrow and high. How is it staying on the rails with this setup? Its center of gravity must be ridiculous, and what is that? I don't even know what that is, or what it's for, or why there's, rainbow ties there. What is happening? I'm missing... There's a lot here that I am not fully comprehending. Actually, looking at the whole picture, I think the locomotive is narrower than the cars it's pulling, which raises so many more questions as to what? It's so confusing. I'm not even sure where the driver and fireman would be sitting. I guess there, maybe? But that would raise even further questions as to where the firebox is supposed to be, or how this thing is really working. I mean, maybe it's supposed to be a diesel, and that's diesel exhaust? Which, okay, but I still don't really get the wheels, guys. Can we... Seriously, someone explain the wheels to me? Because I got nothing. This one is Popular Mechanics magazine, which is not to be confused with Modern Mechanics, as that's modern, not popular, and that's spelled with an X, not a CS, like it's supposed to be. This is the cover of their March 1947 issue, and at first glance, it actually looks pretty normal. That's a fairly typical American diesel, bulldog nose style from that era. It just looks like an EMD, or maybe an Alco PA, or, really any diesel that was made in America at that time. But what's with the, fireworks display? On the sides, what's going on there? Is it on fire? Is something wrong? Oh, no. Those are rocket brakes. Because apparently, somebody in 1947 thought that making brakes utilizing rockets was a really good idea. Now, this is post-World War II, and rocket technology was all the rage. So I'm not surprised that someone imagined this kind of idea, but this is, of course, absurd. There are so many things wrong with this, I'm not even really sure where to begin, but let's talk about the fact that what is this adding to brake technology that doesn't already exist with normal brakes? Like, normal locomotive brakes. Like, there's really no benefit to using rockets over regular old brakes, and in fact I would argue that it offers a hindrance. For one thing, rocket brakes, as brakes, would require fuel to function. A very inefficient amount, I would argue. They would almost have to be liquid-state fuel. The solid-state fuel can't be throttled down, or at all for that matter. But again, it'd be using fuel which you'd have to store, which would make the locomotive heavier, and for what? Making a massive fire hazard on either side and possibly kill someone standing too close to the locomotive. And locomotives use their brakes pretty often. There's plenty of times, even on a normal route, where a train will have to slow down or stop entirely. Why on earth would you make it based on rockets? First of all, it can't be cheaper. Would it be more effective? Possibly. I don't know. I would have to do some number crunching on that. It would depend. But, these aren't very big rockets, so, I'm gonna have to vote no. No, they would not. Oh, okay. Now things are getting alarming. I'm not actually sure exactly what magazine this one was from. It doesn't appear to be a cover, though I do know this illustration was done by Ed Valigursky in 1954. This is another monorail, an overhang monorail, but this one is, well, first of all, let's talk about the size element here. That's supposed to be the crew in the front. This is a multi-story monorail car, which just blows my mind that someone thought we'd ever need something that large to transport people. That's insanity. But what makes this even better to me isn't just the size. It's how this thing moves. Okay, it's attached to a monorail, so you think electric? Maybe diesel? No. You fools. This is about imagination. This is about utter, unspeakable, impossible things. And it's 1954. Rockets are still all the rage. Oh yes, this thing was supposed to be driven by rockets! I can't even begin to explain how bad of a friggin' idea that is. For one thing, I do appreciate the artist thought to write "Danger, keep clear," because this thing will kill you if you get too close to it. Most trains will do that, but this one really will. It's enormous. The airwave following this thing at speed must be huge, and rockets are very hot and give off a lot of heat, so if you're standing anywhere near the back of this thing, it's gonna be, at best, uncomfortable. The rocket part of this was meant to make it achieve really high speeds, which, okay, that's true. It would be able to do that, but at what cost? Rockets are notorious for being inefficient when it comes to fuel consumption. First of all, they take a lot of fuel, generally, much more than pretty much anything else, and they use it very quickly. Trains are usually meant for going fairly long distances, so how long is a rocket supposed to last? A jet would make more sense for this setup in my mind. If we're really doing this, if you really want to play this game, this is actually one of the rare times I'm going to say I would literally prefer a propeller. I still would hate it, but I would prefer it because at least there it would make some level of logical sense. The rockets throw everything off and would make things, well, loud too. Rockets are noisy. And how fast we talking for something that big? On the ground? Danger, keep clear. Listen, nobody reads signs. This is America. I know what happens here. Rockets have been used in sort of a rail-based setup, in rocket sled form, but that's not really what this is. And again with the monorail, I'm not even sure the monorail really makes sense for this because of how large it is. Do not put rockets on trains. And with that, a special thank you goes to all my underwater train finders. Thomas Ward, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Royal Hudson 2860, Lord Hoth 444, Benjamin Owens, Painter Kitsu 131-232, Mr. Black Rose, Master of None, Josh Johnson, Metal for Life Guy, Matthew Gavin, Arthur Roy, DM Tribal Typhoon, Tommy Rossini, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Joshua Long, Alaric Jaspers, Brian, Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Major Klutz, Hayden DeGrow, Ohio Trucker 1, and Ty Hammonds Jr. Till next time, this is Darkness, individual of Fawn, farewell.